Settle in now as the world outside grows quiet, and let your thoughts drift back through the corridors of time to a truly monumental endeavor, a story of courage and endurance. Tonight, we journey with the Carthaginian general, Hannibal, and his formidable army as they faced one of history's most audacious military undertakings, the crossing of the mighty Alps. Close your eyes and imagine the crisp autumn air of 218 BC, palpable sense of bold determination hanging heavy as Hannibal resolved to carry the war to the very heart of Roman power in Italy. This was a decision born not of reckless abandon, but of calculated genius, seeking to shift the theater of war and confront Rome on its own fertile soil. An unprecedented strategy. His plan was daring, almost unthinkable, to lead tens of thousands of soldiers, fierce warriors from Iberia, Africa, and Gaul, along with horses and his famed war elephants, over treacherous mountain passes. These were not just soldiers, but a coalition of cultures. Numidian cavalry, renowned for their swiftness, Balearic slingers with their deadly accuracy, and stoic Iberian swordsmen. The Romans, secure in their dominance, believed the Alps to be an insurmountable barrier, a colossal natural fortress that would shield them from any land invasion from the north, a truly formidable deterrent. They could scarcely conceive that any commander would willingly subject his forces to such a brutal elemental trial, believing the mountains themselves to be their staunchest ally. But Hannibal, a master strategist, driven by a solemn vow sworn to his father Hamilcar to challenge Rome, saw not an impassable wall, but a difficult path to an unexpected attack. He envisioned his forces emerging into the Po Valley as a shocking apparition, sowing chaos and rallying Gallic allies before Rome could muster its legions effectively. Preparations were immense. Supplies of grain, dried meat, and wine gathered. Alliances cautiously forged with certain Gallic tribes whose lands they would traverse, often sealed with promises of plunder. The army, a mix of veterans and new recruits, was steel for the unknown hardships that surely lay ahead, their faith resting largely on Hannibal's proven leadership and indomitable will. The march began, a vast river of humanity and animals snaking its way from Hispania through southern Gaul, its column stretching for miles, a spectacle of organized might. They navigated the coastal routes, crossing the formidable River Rhone on hastily constructed rafts and requisitioned boats, a significant logistical feat even before the mountains. As they approached the foothills, the sheer scale of the Alps began to dawn upon even the most seasoned veterans, their granite faces indifferent to the ambitions of men below. Jagged peaks, like the teeth of some colossal beast, bit into the sky, their silence a profound contrast to the clamor and industry of the advancing Carthaginian force. The air grew colder, the paths narrower and more rugged, and the initial ascent tested the limits of their wagons, their animals, and their own physical endurance from the very start. Cartwheels shattered on unseen rocks, pack animals stumbled under their heavy loads, and the men began to feel the biting change in altitude and the relentless pull of gravity. Local Gallic tribes, sometimes hostile, sometimes wary, watched from the crags and forests, their presence an unspoken threat or an opportunity for perilous negotiation for safe passage. Some chieftains were bribed, others intimidated, but the fear of betrayal or sudden attack from these mountain peoples was a constant source of tension for the advancing army. Hannibal, ever present among his troops, shared their hardships, his iconic one eye scanning the terrain, his voice offering encouragement and stern commands, maintaining their cohesion. He would dismount and walk alongside his infantrymen, his gaze missing nothing, from a loose strap on a soldier's sandal to a nervous glance from a junior officer. He reminded them of the riches of Italy that lay beyond the mountains, painting pictures of fertile vineyards and wealthy cities, stoking their desire to fuel their spirits against the cold. His speeches were legendary, appealing to their honor, their desire for vengeance against Rome, and the promise of land and spoils that awaited the victorious. His diverse army, a tapestry of different languages and cultures, Punic, Celtiberian, Lusitanian, Libyan, found a common purpose in their loyalty to him, a bond forged in shared battles. Translators were essential, but Hannibal himself possessed a remarkable ability to connect with his men, understanding their distinct fighting styles and cultural motivations. The war elephants, majestic and powerful on the plains, now struggled on the uneven ground, their handlers working tirelessly to guide them along precarious ledges, their trumpeting echoing eerily. These magnificent beasts, a psychological weapon as much as a physical one, found the narrow, winding paths and slippery surfaces a terrifying and unnatural challenge. Days turned into a grueling ordeal of upward struggle, each step a victory against the unforgiving mountain. The wind, a constant, biting companion that stole their warmth. The sun, when it appeared, offered little comfort against the chilling drafts that funneled through the valleys and over the high passes, sapping precious energy. They faced sudden blizzards that swept down with little warning, burying paths in deep snow, blinding the men, and causing pack animals to lose their footing and tumble into chasms. The world would turn into a maelstrom of white, disorienting and deadly, forcing the column to halt, huddle together for warmth, and pray for the storm's swift passage. Rockfalls, sometimes natural, caused by the freeze-thaw cycle, sometimes triggered by hostile mountain tribesmen launching ambushes from above, added a constant, terrifying danger. Boulders, dislodged with malicious intent, would come crashing down the slopes, scattering men and beasts. The screams of the injured lost in the echoing cacophony. Food became scarce. The carefully gathered supplies dwindled faster than anticipated due to losses and the increased exertion, and foraging in the barren, rocky landscape yielded little. Hunting parties returned with meager game, and the soldiers were reduced to carefully rationed portions. The gnawing hunger, a constant companion to the cold and fatigue. Men, weakened by hunger, cold, and exhaustion, succumbed to the brutal conditions, their bodies left behind as a grim testament to the mountain's merciless toll on human life. Snow blindness afflicted many, their eyes burning and vision blurred, while frostbite claimed fingers and toes, a cruel and painful consequence of the relentless exposure. The horses, vital for cavalry and transport, suffered immensely, their hooves ill-suited for the icy, shifting scree. Many lost to falls or the sheer strain of the climb. Their whinnies of distress were a heartbreaking sound, as these noble creatures, essential to Hannibal's military strategy, battled the treacherous terrain with diminishing strength. Yet, Hannibal's corps of hardened African and Iberian veterans, the heart of his army, pressed on, their resolve a silent promise, to their commander, and to each other. These were men who had campaigned with him for years, who had tasted victory under his command, and their disciplined endurance set an example for the less experienced troops. He would often be seen at the most dangerous points, personally directing the clearing of paths or organizing the defense against an ambush. His personal courage, a powerful inspiration. His physical presence, sharing the same risks as his men, transformed fear into a focused determination not to let their general down, fostering an unbreakable esprit de corps. One particularly treacherous pass, perhaps the Col de la Traversette or Mont Genèvre, became blocked by a massive rock slide, seeming to halt their advance entirely. Despair, cold and insidious, began to creep into the hearts of the exhausted soldiers, who saw before them an impassable wall of stone, a final cruel trick by the mountains. But Hannibal's ingenuity shone brightly in this dark moment. He ordered fires to be built against the rock, heating the massive boulders until they were scorching hot. Then, with the stone intensely heated, sour wine or vinegar, according to some accounts, was poured upon it, causing the rock to crack and shatter from the thermal shock. This famous feat, whether entirely literal in every detail or embellished by legend, symbolizes his relentless determination to overcome any obstacle the Alps or his enemies could throw. It showcased a mind that refused to accept defeat, always seeking a solution, however unconventional, applying practical knowledge to seemingly impossible military problems. Through immense labor, his engineers and soldiers, using picks, crowbars, and sheer brute force, chipped away at the fractured stone, carving a new passage. For days they toiled, their muscles screaming in protest, fueled by grim determination, eventually creating a path wide enough for the army, even the struggling elephants, to continue. The loyalty of his officers was a crucial bulwark against the surrounding chaos. Men like Maharbal, commander of the formidable Numidian cavalry, and Mago, his own courageous brother, stood by him. Hasdrubal, another key lieutenant, played a vital role in maintaining order in the rearguard, often bearing the brunt of ambushes from opportunistic Gallic tribes. They understood the gravity of their situation, the thin line between success and annihilation, and the absolute necessity of maintaining discipline and morale among the ranks. Their unwavering support for Hannibal's decisions, even when the path seemed darkest, was instrumental in keeping the vast, diverse army moving as a cohesive unit. Sometimes, a brief respite would be found in a sheltered valley, perhaps with a meager offering of forage for the animals, a chance to rest weary limbs and tend to the sick. Fires would be kindled, meager rations shared, and for a few precious hours, the relentless struggle would ease, allowing bodies and spirits a moment to recover. These moments, however fleeting, were vital, allowing the bonds between soldiers from different lands to strengthen, creating a shared experience of suffering that paradoxically fortified their unity. Stories might be exchanged in hushed tones, a shared joke, or simply the silent companionship of those enduring the same extraordinary trial, knitting them closer. After 9 days of torturous climbing through the highest regions, battling blizzards and enemy attacks, they finally reached a summit, a windswept plateau offering a breathtaking vista. The air here was thin and bitingly cold, the landscape stark and barren, but the view that stretched before them was one of profound significance for every man. Below them, shrouded in mist and distance, lay the hazy, undulating plains of Italy, the land they had endured so much to reach, the object of all their striving and sacrifice. It was a moment of mixed emotions, relief at having conquered the ascent, awe at the panorama, but also an understanding of the immense task still ahead. Hannibal, standing before his depleted but still formidable army, his own face etched with fatigue, but his eye, bright with fervor, pointed towards that distant promise. His voice, though perhaps hoarse from the mountain air and constant commands, rang with conviction despite the harsh environment and the visible weariness of his men. He spoke of the fertile lands of the Po Valley, the wealth of Rome that awaited them, and the glory that would be theirs, attempting to reignite the fire in their weary souls. He reminded them that they had overcome the natural ramparts of Italy, something the Romans believed impossible, and that their enemies would now face them in fear and disarray. The sight of Italy, however distant and obscured by haze, did instill a renewed sense of hope, a tangible goal. After weeks of battling the indifferent, towering masses of rock and ice, a murmur went through the ranks, a mixture of exhaustion and dawning triumph, as the soldiers gazed upon the land they had come so far to conquer. But the descent proved to be almost as perilous, if not more so, than the ascent they had just conquered, offering new and terrifying challenges to their resolve. The southern slopes of the Alps, facing Italy, were often steeper and more prone to icy conditions, as the sun had less effect on these shadowed inclines. The northern slopes, while difficult, had been somewhat drier. Now they faced compacted snow and sheer ice, making footing incredibly insecure for both men and animals. Paths that seemed viable from above would suddenly narrow to mere ledges or give way entirely, sending unfortunate soldiers and precious supplies skidding down into deep ravines. The screams of those who fell and the sight of their comrades disappearing into the abyss had a chilling effect on the morale of those who followed. The elephants, already weakened by the climb and lack of fodder, found the downward slopes particularly agonizing, their great bulk making slips and falls catastrophic. Their large feet, so sure on flat ground, offered little purchase on the slick ice, and their handlers struggled valiantly to guide them, often at great personal risk. Men had to carve out footholds in the ice with axes and makeshift tools, sometimes lying flat and sliding, trusting to luck and the strength of their comrades. Human chains were formed in the most treacherous sections, each man bracing the next, a slow, painstaking process that tested their patience and cooperation to the extreme. Landslides were frequent on these unstable slopes, the ground seeming to betray them at every turn, each step fraught with the potential for a fatal misstep or sudden calamity. The melting and refreezing of snow created unstable conditions, and the passage of thousands of men and animals often triggered these dangerous slides of rock and ice. The cold remained relentless, a penetrating chill that seeped into their bones, and the winds seemed to find every gap in their worn clothing as they descended. Nightfall brought no true rest, only a huddled, shivering wait for the dawn, when the perilous journey downwards would resume under gray, unforgiving skies. Progress was agonizingly slow, a true test of nerve and resilience, with Hannibal constantly moving amongst them, overseeing repairs to the path and urging them onward. He seemed to be everywhere at once, his energy belying the hardships he too endured. His strategic mind now focused on the micro-logistics of each treacherous yard gained. His presence was a steadying force, a reminder that their leader was not asking anything of them that he was not willing to endure himself. Sharing every peril, he would praise acts of bravery, console the injured, and ensure that whatever resources remained were distributed as equitably as possible among his suffering troops. He understood that this final phase of the mountain crossing was as much a psychological battle as it was a physical one, fighting against creeping despair and utter exhaustion. The temptation to simply give up, to lie down in the snow and let oblivion take over, must have been immense for many. But the collective will, spurred by Hannibal, prevailed. The local Gallic tribes in these lower Alpine valleys were sometimes just as hostile as those encountered on the ascent, launching opportunistic attacks on the vulnerable, strung-out column. These were often hit-and-run tactics, designed to pick off stragglers or seize unguarded supply animals, forcing Hannibal to maintain constant vigilance even as they descended. Yet, slowly, painstakingly, the terrain began to change, the brutal, sharp peaks giving way to gentler slopes, the air becoming a fraction less biting, the first stunted trees appearing, the sight of green vegetation, however sparse, perhaps hardy mountain pines, or the first signs of alpine meadows, was like a balm to their eyes and a lift to their spirits. It was a tangible sign that the icy desolation, the kingdom of rock and snow that had held them captive for so long, was finally, truly, beginning to recede behind them. After 15 days in total, a fortnight of relentless struggle through the immense mountain range, the exhausted, emaciated remnants of Hannibal's grand army stumbled out. They emerged onto the rolling foothills and then the plains of northern Italy, near modern-day Turin, a battered but unbroken force. Their ordeal in the high Alps concluded. They had achieved the impossible, a feat of endurance and military logistics that would echo down through history, a testament to their leader's audacious vision and their own fortitude. The sheer willpower involved, from the lowest-ranking soldier to Hannibal himself, had etched a new chapter in the annals of military endeavor, stunning their Roman adversaries. His army was a shadow of its former self, perhaps halved in number from the force that had entered Gaul. Many animals lost, but they were now on Roman soil. They were an invading force that had appeared as if from nowhere, bypassing Roman legions waiting further south, their arrival sending shockwaves through the Republic. The crossing of the Alps was not the end, but the terrifying and awe-inspiring beginning of a long and brutal war that would last for nearly 2 more decades. Yet it stood as a monumental triumph of human will over nature's formidable power, a strategic masterstroke that caught Rome completely off guard and set the stage for early Carthaginian victories. The loyalty of his diverse troops, forged in the crucible of shared suffering in the mountains, had held firm, carrying them through unimaginable hardships to the doorstep of their enemy. This bond, transcending language and origin, was perhaps Hannibal's greatest weapon, a cohesive force that would prove resilient in the many battles that lay ahead. And so, as you drift towards sleep, remember the echoes of their footsteps in those high, lonely passes, a story of immense challenge, unwavering loyalty, and an unforgettable journey. Listen closely, and you might almost hear the wind whispering tales of their courage, the clink of armor, and the determined commands of their steadfast general. The tale of Hannibal's Alpine march serves as a profound reminder of what determined spirits, bound by a common purpose and inspired leadership, can achieve against daunting odds. It speaks to the deep reserves of strength that lie within, often untapped until tested by the severest of trials, revealing an extraordinary capacity for endurance. This incredible feat, born of bold strategy and incredible sacrifice, would forever mark Hannibal as one of history's most brilliant and daring military commanders. His name became synonymous with audacity and strategic surprise, studied by military leaders for centuries, a benchmark against which other great campaigns would be measured. The mountains themselves, ancient and vast, stood silent witness to this incredible human drama, their peaks still holding the whispers of that legendary passage centuries ago. They remain a timeless monument to the ephemeral nature of human conflict, yet also to the enduring legacy of extraordinary human achievement against their backdrop. The courage displayed by each soldier, from the Numidian scout to the Gallic warrior, facing personal fears and brutal conditions daily, contributed to the collective strength. It was the sum of countless individual acts of bravery, perseverance, and mutual support that made the impossible crossing a reality, a victory of the human spirit. Imagine the profound relief, mingled with exhaustion and a fierce pride, as the first soldiers felt the softer earth of the Italian plains beneath their worn-out sandals. The mountain's tyranny was finally broken, replaced by a new, more tangible enemy, but one they felt prepared to face. Having conquered the very elements, Hannibal had not just moved an army, he had transported an entire war machine, men, horses, elephants, and supplies, across a barrier deemed impassable by his foes. This act fundamentally altered the course of the Second Punic War, forcing Rome to fight on its own territory under conditions dictated by the Carthaginian general. His name and the legend of his elephants crossing the snowy peaks, their bulky forms silhouetted against the icy crags, would become an enduring symbol of perseverance. It captures the imagination, even now, a testament to strategic genius, unwavering will, and the ability to inspire men to achieve feats beyond their own imagining. As the quiet of the night deepens around you, let the story of this incredible journey settle within you, a testament to the enduring power of human will and unwavering resolve. May it remind you that within challenges often lie the seeds of great strength, and that the human spirit can soar above even the highest, most formidable peaks. May your own dreams be peaceful tonight, filled with the quiet strength and the serene beauty that comes from knowing even the greatest obstacles can be overcome. Let the tale inspire a sense of calm, knowing that through perseverance and courage, paths can be found through even the most daunting of landscapes. The world of the past holds so many such stories, whispers of endeavors that shape our understanding of what is possible when spirit, intellect, and will combine. These narratives are not just accounts of events, but testaments to the resilience and adaptability that define the human experience across all ages. Sleep now, letting the echoes of this ancient march fade into the gentle stillness of the night, carrying with you a sense of quiet wonder and profound peace. The mountains sleep, and so should you, your mind at rest, cradled by the enduring story of Hannibal's incredible Alpine adventure. Let the soft blanket of night envelop you, and as your breathing deepens, allow your mind to journey to sun-drenched lands of long ago, to a time of legend and noble contest. Tonight, we travel to ancient Greece, to the sacred groves of Olympia, where the first Olympic Games were born, a celebration of human strength, spirit, and the pursuit of excellence. Imagine the warmth of the Mediterranean sun, the gentle caress of the sea breeze, the scent of wild herbs and ancient olive trees, perfuming the air with history. Picture the hushed reverence surrounding this profound tradition, a beacon that would echo through millennia, calling forth heroes and champions from every corner of the Hellenic world. These games were not merely athletic events, though skill and power were greatly admired. They were a profound religious festival, a sacred tribute dedicated to Zeus, king of the Olympian gods. This Olympian gathering also signified a sacred truce, a divinely ordained cessation of hostilities, binding a world often fractured by conflict between proud city-states. It was a time when weapons were laid down and grievances set aside so that all could travel and partake in this shared heritage under the watchful eyes of the gods. The very earth of Olympia seemed to pulse with a unique energy, a convergence of human aspiration and divine presence, creating an atmosphere unlike any other. Our story begins in Olympia, a sanctuary nestled in a fertile valley in the western Peloponnese, where the Alpheus and Cladios rivers whispered ancient secrets to the land. This was a place deemed holy, where majestic temples dedicated to Zeus and Hera stood alongside treasuries built by grateful city-states amidst whispering, silver-leaved olive trees. This was no ordinary location chosen by chance. It was considered the domain of the gods, a sacred precinct where mortals could feel a tangible connection to the divine. The air itself seemed charged with anticipation, a palpable excitement, as athletes, judges, and spectators from across the Greek world began their arduous pilgrimage. They came by land and sea, from Sicily and Asia Minor, from the mainland and the islands, drawn by the allure of glory, divine favor, and the spirit of Hellenic unity. For centuries, this site would become the vibrant heart of a recurring spectacle, a testament to the Greek ideals of physical prowess, intellectual sharpness, and unwavering spiritual devotion. The ground itself was hallowed, walked upon by legendary figures, and echoing with the triumphs of generations past, each stone holding a story. Olympia flourished not just as a sporting venue, but as a crucible of culture, where ideas were exchanged as readily as athletic challenges were met. Before any contest began, profound and intricate rituals unfolded, binding the games inextricably to the gods, particularly Zeus, whose massive gold and ivory statue would later dominate his temple. This colossal chryselephantine statue, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, created by the master sculptor Phidias, radiated an aura of serene power and divine authority. Processions of white-robed priests, hopeful athletes, and solemn officials would wind their way through the Alps, the sacred grove, their voices raised in ancient paeans and hymns. Offerings of wine, honey cakes, and precious incense were carried with solemn care, laid before altars that had witnessed countless such devotions over the ages, sacrifices of oxen, their horns often gilded, and other animals were made on ornate altars, the rising smoke carrying prayers and promises to the heavens, seeking blessings. These rituals sought divine favor for fair competition, for victory untainted by hubris, and for the continued prosperity of the games and the Greek people, athletes, their hearts pounding with a mixture of hope and trepidation, would take solemn oaths before the imposing statue of Zeus Horkios, the stern keeper of oaths. They swore to compete fairly, with integrity, according to the established rules, and not to resort to bribery or any form of deceit to gain an unfair advantage. These vows were not taken lightly, for the Greeks believed deeply in the power of divine justice. To break them was to invite disgrace, punishment, and the wrath of the gods. The weight of this oath settled upon each competitor, a reminder that their actions were observed not only by mortals, but by the eternal deities themselves. The athletes themselves were a remarkable sight, men who had dedicated years, often a decade or more, to rigorous, unceasing training in their local gymnasia. Their bodies were honed to perfection, sculpted by exercise and discipline, reflecting the cherished Greek ideal of kalokagathia, the beautiful and good, a harmony of physical and moral excellence. They typically competed nude, a practice that symbolized their purity of intent, their lack of artifice, and their humble vulnerability before the gods and spectators. This nudity also emphasized the perfection of the male form, an aesthetic ideal celebrated in Greek art, their muscles gleaming with olive oil under the bright Hellenic sun. These were not professionals in the modern sense, earning salaries, but often men of aristocratic families or those whose city-states provided the means for their long, expensive training. The commitment required was total, encompassing not just physical drills, but also strict dietary regimens, rest, and the development of mental fortitude for the contests. Their trainers, or gymnasti, were respected figures, often former athletes themselves, who understood not just physical conditioning, but also strategy, nutrition, and sports psychology. These mentors guided every aspect of an athlete's preparation, instilling discipline and the subtle arts required for success in their chosen events, fostering a deep bond. Each city-state, or polis, from mighty Athens and Sparta to smaller, ambitious towns, took immense pride in its athletes, seeing them as ambassadors of their community's virtues. Victories brought not only personal glory, but also immense honor and prestige back to their homelands, often celebrated with public holidays and lavish banquets. The earliest games, according to tradition, dating back to the mythical hero Pelops or even Heracles, and historically recorded from 776 BC, featured just one event. This was the stadion race, a sprint of about 192 meters, the length of the meticulously prepared Olympic stadium track, a simple yet profound test of pure speed. Imagine the hushed silence as the runners, perhaps a dozen or more, took their positions at the balbis, the stone starting line, muscles tensed, gaze fixed on the finish. The crowd, packed onto the grassy embankments surrounding the track, held its breath, the hopes of their respective cities resting on the swiftness of their champions. Then, an explosion of effort as the herald's trumpet blared, dust rising from the sun-baked track as they surged forward, each striving to be the first to reach the distant marker. It was a fleeting moment of perfect triumph for the victor, a culmination of years of toil, his name forever etched in the annals of Olympic history. Over time, more events were added, expanding the spectacle. The Diolos, a race of 2 stades, down the track and back, demanding stamina as well as initial burst. The Dolichos, a long-distance race of perhaps 20 or 24 stades, tested the very limits of human endurance. A grueling marathon of its age, armed races, the hoplitodromos, saw athletes compete, wearing helmets and greaves, carrying shields, a reminder of the martial skills prized by Greek society. The pentathlon was a true test of all-around athleticism, a prestigious 5-event contest combining the discus throw, the javelin throw, the long jump, wrestling, and a foot race. This event was designed to identify the most versatile and harmoniously developed athlete, one who embodied a balance of strength, speed, agility, and grace. In the discus throw, athletes whirled, their bodies coiling and uncoiling with immense power to send the heavy bronze disc soaring through the air, seeking maximum distance. The javelin, also thrown for distance, required not only strength, but also a precise technique, often using a leather thong called an ankyle to impart spin and stability. The long jump was unique, often performed from a standing start with halteres, small, dumbbell-like weights held in each hand, which athletes swung to gain momentum and propel themselves further. The coordination required to effectively use the halteres, timing the swing with the leap, was a complex and demanding skill, making it a fascinating spectacle. Wrestling, or pale, was a highly respected event, a contest of strength, grappling skill, and intricate strategy, where competitors sought to throw their opponent cleanly to the ground 3 times. Balance, leverage, and an understanding of holds and counterholds were paramount. The athletes oiled bodies, making grips difficult, demanding immense power and quick thinking. Boxing, Pixmachia, was a brutal and often bloody affair, with fighters wrapping their hands in himantes, tough leather thongs, sometimes weighted, exchanging powerful blows. Endurance, courage, and the ability to withstand and deliver punishment were key, the contest continuing until one fighter was knocked out or conceded defeat by raising a finger. The pankration, a fierce combination of boxing and wrestling with very few rules, only biting and gouging were typically forbidden, was perhaps the most demanding event. It was a true test of raw combat skill, stamina, and pain tolerance, often resulting in dramatic finishes and cementing the victor's reputation for formidable toughness. Chariot racing, held in the separate, expansive hippodrome, was a thrilling and often perilous spectacle, a favorite of the wealthy patrons who owned the magnificent teams. These magnificent 4-horse chariots, tethripa, or 2-horse chariots, sonorous, driven by skilled, often hired, charioteers, thundered around the track at breakneck speeds. The tight turns around the campteres, or turning posts, were scenes of chaos and danger, with collisions, shattered wheels, and spectacular crashes, adding to the visceral excitement. Single horse races, Keilis, also took place, showcasing the speed and agility of the finest steeds from across the Greek world, their riders displaying exceptional, daring horsemanship, a cornerstone of the ancient Olympics. Perhaps its most remarkable feature was the Ekacheria, the sacred truce, proclaimed months before the games by heralds. These messengers, known as spondophoroi, bearing a caduceus staff, journeyed throughout the entirety of Greece and its colonies, announcing the truce period. All hostilities were expected to cease. Armies were forbidden to enter Elis, the region of Olympia, and safe passage was guaranteed for all athletes, officials, and spectators. This peace, though temporary, typically lasting 1 to 3 months, to allow for travel, underscored the unifying power of the games in a politically fragmented landscape. It was a remarkable diplomatic and religious achievement, a brief period where shared Hellenic identity, cultural bonds, and religious devotion overshadowed bitter political divisions and ongoing wars. It allowed individuals from rival states like Athens and Sparta, Corinth and Argos, to gather not as armed enemies, but as fellow Greeks, participants in a sacred tradition. The truce was a testament to the profound respect all Greeks held for Olympia and its divine patrons, a practical necessity for the game's very existence and success. This commitment to peace, even for a short duration, demonstrated a yearning for unity and a recognition of a shared heritage that transcended local quarrels. The prizes awarded were not of material wealth, not gold or silver coins, but of immense symbolic value, reflecting the game's spiritual and honorable nature. The victor received a simple wreath, the kotinos, painstakingly cut with a golden sickle by a boy whose parents were both alive, from the sacred wild olive tree. This tree, the Kallistephanos, was believed to have been planted by Heracles himself, linking the prize directly to the mythical founder of the games. This olive wreath was the ultimate honor, a tangible symbol of divine blessing and supreme athletic achievement, more coveted than any worldly riches, signifying true, untarnished glory. Victorious athletes returned to their home cities as heroes, not just celebrated, but almost deified, greeted with ecstatic processions, feasts, and public adulation. Poems, known as odes or epinikia, were commissioned from famous poets like Pindar and Bacchylides, immortalizing their feats and linking their lineage to gods and heroes. Sometimes, a section of the city wall was symbolically torn down for the victor's re-entry, signifying that a city producing such men needed no other defense. Their names would be meticulously recorded in the official Olympic victor lists, ensuring their fame, their kleos, would endure for generations, a powerful incentive for striving. This pursuit of arete, or excellence in all things, physical, moral, and intellectual, was a core Greek value, and the Olympic Games provided the grandest public stage for its demonstration. The victor often received practical benefits too, such as free meals for life in the Prytaneum, the town hall, or exemption from taxes, tangible rewards for their divine favor. The spirit of competition was intense, almost ferociously so, driven by an unquenchable desire for honor, Timi, and undying glory, Kleos, not just for oneself. Victory brought fame to one's family, lineage, and above all, to one's city-state, making each athlete a representative of their entire community's pride and virtue. While the ideal was fair play and respect for opponents, the desire to win was overwhelming, and instances of cheating, though severely punished if discovered, did occasionally occur. Bribery or foul play, if proven, resulted in heavy fines, and the money collected was used to erect bronze statues of Zeus, called Zanes, lining the path to the stadium. These statues often bore inscriptions naming the cheat and their city, serving as a perpetual, shameful reminder of the consequences of dishonoring the games and the gods. The Hellenodikai, the robed judges of the games, typically 10 in number, and chosen from the leading families of Elis, meticulously oversaw every aspect of the events. They underwent a 10-month training period themselves, studying the ancient rules and traditions, ensuring their judgments were informed, impartial, and just. Their authority was absolute and respected, their decisions final, and they had the power to disqualify athletes, impose fines, and even administer corporal punishment for infractions. They themselves took an oath to judge fairly, without prejudice, understanding the sacred trust placed upon them to maintain the integrity and purity of the Olympic tradition. Spectators, exclusively men and unmarried women, married women were famously barred from even viewing the games, flocked from all corners of the Greek-speaking world. They created a vibrant, bustling, and sometimes chaotic atmosphere in Olympia, a temporary city teeming with diverse dialects, customs, and fervent philosophical discussions. Merchants set up stalls selling food, wine, crafts, and religious trinkets. Poets recited their latest epics, and philosophers like Plato and Aristotle engaged in public debates. The games were thus a significant pan-Hellenic cultural festival, an artistic and intellectual marketplace, as much as an athletic showcase, fostering a sense of shared Greek identity. For those few days, every 4 years, Olympia transformed into the vibrant, pulsating center of the Hellenic world, a place of pilgrimage, intense celebration, and profound communal experience. The shared excitement, the collective gasps at a near fall in wrestling, the roar for a hometown hero crossing the finish line, these forged powerful, lasting memories. The legacy of these ancient games, with their potent emphasis on peace, individual honor, and the boundless pursuit of human potential, would be rediscovered centuries later, their ideals, filtered through time and reinterpreted, directly inspired the founding of our modern Olympic movement in the late 19th century by Baron Pierre de Coubertin. They remind us of a time when sport was deeply, inextricably intertwined with spirituality, artistic expression, and fundamental cultural identity, a powerful force for uniting people. The dedication of those ancient athletes, their unwavering commitment to years of arduous training, and their raw courage in the face of intense competition still resonates today. Their stories, preserved in ancient texts and whispered by the ruins, offer a timeless example of human aspiration, discipline, and the quest for excellence. Imagine the setting sun casting long, golden shadows over the stadium, the rhythmic cheers of the crowd finally fading, leaving a sense of profound peace and fulfillment. The air would grow cool, stars would begin to emerge in the darkening sky over Olympia, and the day's champions would reflect on their hard-won glory. The victors, crowned with the simple yet priceless olive wreath, revered by all, would carry the vivid memory of their triumph for the rest of their lives. Their names would be whispered with admiration in their hometowns, their deeds recounted to inspire future generations to strive for similar heights of achievement. The sacred flame, though a modern addition to our Olympics, beautifully captures the spirit of that ancient, perpetual fire that burned on the altars of Olympia, a symbol of continuity. It represents the enduring ideals of peace, unity, and the light of human spirit, passed from one generation of athletes to the next, across cultures and time. The echoes of those first foot races on the dusty track, the metallic thud of the discus hitting the earth, the thunderous shouts of the charioteers in the hippodrome still linger. They are held within the quiet ruins of Olympia today, inviting contemplation on the passage of time and the enduring power of human endeavor and celebration. As you drift deeper into restful slumber, picture the serene beauty of those sacred groves, the white marble of the temples gleaming softly under the moonlight. Imagine the scene where gods and mortals met, not in conflict, but in the shared pursuit of glory, harmony, and the perfection of human capability. Let the spirit of that ancient truce, the Ekecheria, bring a profound sense of peace to your mind, a soothing reminder of our shared humanity, transcending all differences, the pursuit of excellence, the sheer joy found in dedicated effort, the unshakable honor in fair play. These are the timeless values gifted to us from ancient Olympia. They continue to inspire us, to call us to be better, stronger, and more graceful in all our endeavors, just as they did for those athletes long ago. May your rest be as profound and rejuvenating as the peace that settled over Olympia at the close of those first remarkable Olympic Games, a peace well earned. Sleep now under the watchful gaze of a starlit sky, carrying the gentle spirit of ancient Greece and its glorious celebration of human endeavor into your dreams. Let the calm of Olympia soothe your thoughts, and may you awaken refreshed, inspired by the enduring legacy of those who strived for greatness so many centuries past.